Inai sat on the imported leather sofa in my study, clutching a phone with a shattered screen in my hand. This phone was my wife Vivienne's backup phone. Just half an hour ago, Vivienne had hurried to the bathroom to take a shower and for once forgot to lock the study door. The backup phone she usually kept hidden away slipped out of the pocket of her coat hanging on the coat rack and dropped onto the carpet. The screen, originally on silent mode, suddenly lit up. In a WeChat message popped up like a death warrant, glaring and impossible to ignore. The sender's name was Julian. Inai would recognize that name, even if it were burned to ash. He was a notorious speculator in the city, and my biggest business rival. What was more secret was that he had been Vivienne's college sweetheart. The message from Julian read, "Vivienne, did you get the core bidding document for the North Bank District development inside Damian Corporation or not? Tomorrow's closed-door tender meeting and whether Julian Enterprises can turn the tables depends entirely on what you do." Staring at that clear line of text, I sat in the darkness and let out a cold laugh, but it felt like a blunt instrument was pounding inside my chest. Vivienne was one of the top commercial lawyers in our city. In the eyes of outsiders, she was the representative of a highly educated, high IQ, elegant and composed intellectual woman. We had been married for 3 full years. Over those 3 years, I had truly given her everything I had. Not only did I provide her with the most luxurious care in life, but I also handed over all the core legal contracts of Damian Corporation, large and small, to her law firm to handle without reservation. This was my 100% trust in her, yet I never imagined that the capable wife I had personally elevated was using her position to secretly pass the commercial secrets I had painstakingly built to her lover, like throwing scraps to a dog. Inai did not alert her. Instead, I took a deep breath and calmly connected the backup phone to my secure computer in the study using a data cable. Inai skillfully ran data recovery software designed to restore deleted files. As the progress bar slowly advanced, the chat records and file transfer history that Vivienne had deliberately deleted were torn open before my eyes like a wound covered in pus. The content inside was absolutely horrifying to me. In there were hundreds of pages of file transfer records spanning a full year, from our corporation's first quarter financial reports from last year, to the technical patent authorization documents for core projects, to the strategic deployment plan for the second half of the year. Vivienne had packed and sent everything to Julian without exception. Interwoven within those dense files were their disgusting flirtatious messages. When facing me, Vivienne always put on a cool and aloof intellectual demeanor, but in front of Julian she was utterly fawning and gentle. She even used a condescending professional tone to teach Julian how to exploit legal loopholes to cannibalize Damian Corporation. Just as I finished copying all the evidence into my encrypted cloud drive, the study door made a soft sound. Vivienne walked in, wearing an expensive white silk nightgown, wiping her wet long hair with a towel as she stepped gracefully through the door. Her face still had the post-shower flush, looking as pure and elegant as ever. Who could imagine that a female lawyer so full of knowledge and experience was rotten to the core inside? Vivienne said, "Damian, why haven't you gone back to the bedroom to rest yet? Are you still busy with company work? You haven't been looking well lately. You must take care of your health. Work is endless, but your health is your real asset." I raised my head, and the gloom on my face instantly vanished, replaced by a gentle smile exactly the same as usual. At the same time, my right hand discreetly slipped the shattered backup phone into my trouser pocket under the desk. Inai said, "It's nothing. Inai just have a few large cross-border merger and acquisition projects entering the final closing stage. The legal department people are too slow and their inefficiency gives me a headache." Inai was just thinking, rather than letting them keep wasting time, I might as well hand the final contract for our most critical North Bank District merger project directly to you, the great lawyer, to review personally. After all, I always feel uneasy when others handle things. Only when it passes through your hands can I truly sleep soundly. Hearing my words, Vivienne's hand wiping her hair suddenly paused. Although she tried her best to hide it, I keenly caught the flash of intense excitement and greed that flickered through the depths of her eyes and was simply impossible to suppress. Vivienne walked over with delicate steps, gently placed her hand on my shoulder, and breathed like an orchid. Vivienne said, "Damian, what kind of talk is that? We are legally married and share weal and woe. Your career is my career. Damian Corporation's achievements today also contain a piece of my hard work. Since you trust me so much, rest assured and hand the documents over to me. I will use all my professional knowledge to shield you from every legal risk and ensure this merger goes off without a hitch." I took her cold and slender hand, smiling as I nodded to her. I said, "Good. With those words from you, my hanging heart can finally settle. Vivienne, you truly deserve to be my good wife." I silently added in my heart, "Rest assured." Of course, I am 100% assured. Next, I will watch with my own eyes as you, this top-tier lawyer, use the clever intellect you are so proud of to steadily place the gallows I have carefully prepared around your own necks, step by step. The next morning, I did not even eat breakfast at home. I drove directly to the CEO's office at Damian Corporation headquarters with a stern face. The moment I stepped into my office, I called in my personal assistant and locked the office door behind him. The assistant said, "Mr. Damian, you called me in so early. Is there some emergency change in the North Bank District project?" I looked at him coldly and tossed the core evidence drive I had copied the night before onto the desk. I said, "From now on, seal all the North Bank District documents we originally prepared for the arbitration tribunal and the tender meeting. Do not touch a single word of those documents. I want you to immediately assemble our heavily recruited core actuarial team and several other completely independent top legal consultants. Before the end of the workday today, I want a brand new, extremely realistic top-secret document produced." The assistant was stunned for a moment, clearly confused. The assistant said, "A brand new document. Mr. Damian, tomorrow's closed-door meeting is of critical importance. Changing documents at this moment. Isn't the risk too great? If any logical flaws appear, we could face a passive position." I tapped the desk, my eyes filled with ruthlessness. I said, "What I want is the flaws. Listen carefully. On the surface, this new document must appear flawless. The projected profits, core bidding price, and merger terms must be so enticing that Julian will go crazy the moment he sees it. However, I want you to embed 3 extremely hidden but fatal legal chain traps in the most critical parts of the contract, specifically in Article 4, Section 2 on asset pledges, and Article 9 on patent cross-licensing authorizations. These 3 traps must appear completely compliant on the surface, but the moment Julian dares to publicly present this document as evidence in tomorrow's tender or commercial arbitration, it will directly trigger the linked liquidation clauses. Moreover, as soon as he signs or cites it, it will legally constitute fraudulent malicious competition and leave behind irrefutable ironclad evidence that can never be erased. Do you understand?" After listening to my description, the assistant broke out in a cold sweat on his forehead. He nodded repeatedly, his eyes filled with awe towards me. The assistant said, "I understand, Miss Damian. Brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. This way, whoever steals this document to use as their trump card will personally dig their own grave. Ini will handle this personally. I guarantee that no one outside the core team will see any clue." At exactly 5 o'clock in the afternoon, this fake top-secret document, weighing over 200 pages and loaded with countless legal poisons, was delivered to my desk without a single error. Ini deliberately sealed it tightly in a red craft paper envelope stamped with the words Damian Corporation Top Secret. When I returned home in the evening, just as expected, Vivienne was already sitting in the living room waiting for me. The moment she saw me enter, she immediately came up to greet me, carefully helping me take off my suit jacket and hanging it on the rack. Vivienne said, "Damian, you look completely exhausted today. Is that core merger document for the North Bank District finally done? Do you need me to go to the legal library right now to conduct a full compliance review for you?" I deliberately sighed and pulled her hand toward the study on the second floor. In front of her, I placed the heavy red craft paper envelope into the German imported safe in the corner of the study. Then, right before her eyes, I unhurriedly entered a brand new set of numbers on the electronic keypad. Ini said, "Vivienne, This document is related to the strategic development plan of Damian Corporation for the next 5 full years. Its implicit value is at least 300 million. The market is very tight right now, and some unusual signs have appeared inside the company. I suspect there is a mole among the senior management. For absolute security, no one in the world can look at this except me. I just changed the password to this safe to our wedding anniversary, which is 0928. I really don't feel safe leaving it at the company. Leaving it at home, watched over by you, the great lawyer, is the only way I can truly feel at ease. Vivienne snuggled gently against my shoulder and even personally brought me a steaming cup of warm milk. Vivienne said, "Damian, you are so good to me and trust me so much. I am truly touched. Don't worry, in such an important item at home, with me watching over it every day, not even a fly could get in. Why don't you drink the milk first and go to bed early tonight? I will stand by you to face any problem, no matter how big." I looked at the milk in front of me, smiled slightly, and drank it all in one gulp. In the middle of the night, I lay on the large bed in the master bedroom, pretending to have fallen into a sleep so deep that not even thunder could wake me because of the drugged milk, even deliberately making steady breathing sounds. At exactly 2 o'clock in the morning, faint moonlight seeped through the gap in the curtains and scattered across the room. In this dead silence, I felt very clearly that the blanket next to me was being gently lifted. Vivienne got out of bed lightly and quietly, not even wearing her slippers. Barefoot, like a vulture seeking rotting flesh in the dark, she slipped out of the bedroom without a sound and headed toward the study. I suddenly opened my eyes. There was no trace of sleepiness in them, only endless ice. I casually took out the personal tablet from under my pillow. It was playing the real-time surveillance footage from the hidden camera in the study. In the footage, Vivienne was crouching in front of the safe. By the faint light of her phone screen, she expertly entered the 4 digits, 0928. With a crisp click, the safe door opened. Vivienne could not wait to take out the red craft paper envelope from inside. Her breathing became extremely rapid at that moment, and her face appeared somewhat distorted from excitement. She pulled out her phone with trembling hands, aimed it at every page of the document inside, and began frantically pressing the shutter. I leaned against the headboard, watching the screen showing the elite female lawyer bustling about with great enthusiasm. The cold smile at the corner of my mouth grew thicker and thicker. "Eat up, Vivienne. Eat more. This is the last meal I have specially prepared for you and Julian. The fuller you eat, the more miserably you will die on the guillotine tomorrow." For the entire following week, Vivienne behaved more virtuously and considerately than at any time during our 3 years of marriage. She got up promptly at 6 o'clock every morning to personally cook various complex, nourishing herbal soups and abalone porridge for me. She would even stand at the entrance, gently and meticulously adjusting every wrinkle on my tie. Vivienne said, "Damian, you have been worrying too much about the North Bank District project lately. You have lost so much weight. It truly breaks my heart to see. Once this commercial arbitration and tender are all successfully concluded, put your work aside. Let's go to a private island in the South Pacific for a long vacation and properly enjoy some time for just the 2 of us. Doesn't that sound good?" I reached out and gently stroked her delicate cheek, my eyes filled with a deep affection that could drown a person. I said, "Sure, Vivienne. After everything is completely settled this time, we should indeed sit down and properly settle the old scores we have accumulated over these years, one by one." Vivienne was visibly taken aback for a moment. A flicker of doubt passed through her intelligent eyes, but she immediately dismissed it as my dry business elite humor and marital banter. She laughed so hard she doubled over, her whole body leaning into my embrace as she wrapped her arms tightly around my waist. However, at an angle she could not see, my expression instantly turned colder than the ice of Antarctica. Because just that morning, the most top-tier private investigation agency in the entire city, which I had hired at great expense, had sent a thick stack of new photos and high-definition videos directly to my private email. Those photos were taken with extreme clarity, The background was the luxury private room of a well-known members-only high-end private Western restaurant in the city. In the footage, Vivienne was elaborately dressed, wearing a sexy, backless gown, sitting face-to-face with Julian. With the posture of a victor, Vivienne personally pushed a black encrypted USB drive across the table to Julian. Julian's expression at that moment could only be described as ecstatic. He looked at Vivienne as if she were a goddess of wealth. He even could not resist lowering his head in public to kiss the back of Vivienne's hand in the most disgusting manner. And Vivienne not only did not refuse, but coyly allowed him to hold her hand. The two of them were exchanging amorous glances, filthy enough to make one vomit. Just as I was coldly looking at these photos, my phone vibrated violently. It was a call from my assistant. The assistant said, "Mr. Damian, everything is progressing exactly as you anticipated. Julian has completely taken the bait. He is acting like a complete madman now. Just this morning, Julian Enterprises suddenly issued a public announcement that they have forcibly diverted nearly all the liquid funds from their listed companies. They even unilaterally terminated 2 other profitable quality projects, willingly incurring heavy breach of contract penalties. They are now betting everything on the North Bank District merger case. They have formally filed for asset preservation and a pre-trial injunction with the State Commercial Arbitration Tribunal, attempting to forcibly freeze all the core bank accounts of Damian Corporation at the very first moment of the hearing. Mr. Damian, they are trying to play a fatal strike against us." I listened to the assistant's rapid report over the phone, tapping my fingers rhythmically on the desk. Inez said, "Good. Very good. I'm not afraid of him making a big scene. I'm afraid of him not daring to make it big enough. Go arrange with the media immediately. No matter the public relations cost, blow up the news of tomorrow's State Commercial Arbitration Tribunal hearing into the front-page headline of the entire province and even the national business community. I want all the legal peers, financial journalists and political and business tycoons in this city to be there on time tomorrow to observe. I want them, under the most dazzling spotlight, to witness this grand spectacle. Vivienne, this woman who thought she was so clever, believed she had done everything flawlessly. Even on the night before the hearing, she was still putting on an act, sitting on the sofa at home, holding a few fake legal analysis reports and earnestly helping me analyze the situation for the next day. Vivienne said, "Damian, I have carefully studied the litigation materials recently submitted by Julian Enterprises. The other side is clearly well prepared this time. Several of their legal arguments are very tricky. Based on the current legal logic, we might suffer a big loss in the initial trial and even face the risk of having our accounts forcibly frozen. You must prepare for the worst mentally. If things really don't work out, listen to my suggestion in court tomorrow and make some concessions of interest to Julian appropriately. Sometimes taking a step back opens up a world of possibilities." I sat across from her, swirling a glass of red wine in my hand, looking at her utterly hypocritical face that she played to perfection. I said, "Vivienne, with you, the youngest and most elite senior partner female lawyer in the legal circles of this city, sitting beside me as my chief advisor, how do you think I, Damian, could possibly lose tomorrow? Am I right?" Vivienne tugged at the corner of her mouth somewhat unnaturally and raised her glass to take a large gulp of water to conceal the guilt and unease in her heart. At exactly 9 o'clock in the morning on the 10th day, the main trial hall of the State Commercial Arbitration Tribunal was packed with people, a sea of black. Just as I had arranged earlier, the public gallery was not only completely full, but the back was tightly packed with top-tier financial journalists carrying all sorts of cameras and equipment. The most elite business peers and authoritative legal experts from the entire province were almost all in attendance. Flashbulbs flickered incessantly from the very beginning, and the atmosphere was so heavy it almost dripped with tension. Julian had deliberately worn an expensive, custom-made navy blue suit today. He was slicked up and polished to a shine, sitting in the applicant's seat with an air of triumphant confidence. Vivienne, in a crisp and authoritative black professional suit, sat right in the center of the massive legal team behind Julian, serving as the specially retained legal expert for Julian Enterprises. She deliberately turned her head away, her gaze not daring to make any direct contact with me sitting on the opposite side. The chief arbitrator struck the gavel heavily and declared the session open. Julian practically jumped up from his seat impatiently, his face bearing a sickeningly arrogant attitude. He directly hurled his carefully prepared bombshell at the arbitrators on the panel and the media below. Julian declared loudly, "Your Honor, esteemed members of the media, the reason we have initiated this commercial arbitration involving a massive sum today is that we have obtained the core confidential evidence of Damian Corporation's malicious lowball competition, falsified financial data, and severely fraudulent bidding practices in the North Bank District merger case. This core document, personally signed by Damian and locked in his secure archive, is legally sufficient to completely prove that Damian Corporation has engaged in extremely serious commercial fraud over the past year. I request that the tribunal immediately initiate emergency procedures and indefinitely freeze all core assets and bank accounts under Damian Corporation's name." As soon as these words were spoken, the entire quiet arbitration hall instantly erupted into a massive, barely suppressed uproar. Reporters frantically pressed their shutters, and even a few familiar business tycoons began looking at me with pity in their eyes. Julian waved his hand triumphantly, and his assistant immediately submitted the full 200+ pages of the fake document, which Vivienne had secretly photographed from my safe in the dead of night and printed out as the primary core evidence. It was simultaneously displayed on the large screen for the entire hall to see, and at that moment, Vivienne also slowly stood up under the focus of countless camera flashes. She straightened her suit jacket and delivered her supplementary statement in an extremely professional and flawlessly cold tone. Vivienne said, "As an executive council member of the State Bar Association and the specially retained legal consultant for this case, I can vouch to this tribunal with my professional reputation and credentials. All the core evidence submitted by our side today has been obtained through completely legal and compliant channels and possesses absolute, unshakable legal validity. The actions of the corporation under Damian's name have seriously violated the bottom line of our commercial laws and constitute fraudulent, malicious competition. On behalf of the law, I support all of the applicants' claims." After listening to this pair of adulterers deliver their passionate and wonderfully theatrical performance one after another on stage, I, who had been sitting silently with my head lowered the entire time, finally could not help but lean back in my chair and burst into loud laughter in the deathly silence of the entire hall. That laughter echoed with particular harshness and incongruity in the empty chamber. I ignored Julian's vicious glare and unhurriedly adjusted my tie, then turned my head to signal my chief defense attorney that it was time to smash their plates. My lawyer let out a cold laugh and opened his folder. My lawyer said, "Your Honor, the so-called core confidential evidence that the opposing side has just presented so righteously and even vouched for with their professional reputation is, from a legal standpoint, a pile of completely worthless waste paper. To be precise, it is a decoy draft that our CEO, Mr. Damian, deliberately drafted and discarded 2 weeks ago after suspecting there was a spy inside the company. What is most ironic is that the 3 high-tech patent numbers within this draft, which the opposing side treated as the absolute core of their killing blow, are entirely fictitious numbers that do not exist in the official system of the Patent and Trademark Office at all. Mr. Julian, by bringing a lawsuit against us for malicious competition using a document where even the patent numbers are fabricated, you have already committed malicious litigation fraud." Under the gaze of everyone present, so shocked their eyes nearly popped out, I stood up with a cold laugh and pulled a stack of original credentials and official certification documents stamped with the fresh red seal of the Patent and Trademark Office directly from my briefcase, slamming them heavily onto the table. I said, "Julian, Vivienne, open your dog eyes and look clearly. Who exactly gave you the audacity to come here spouting nonsense with a dose of poison I deliberately fed to you? Did it come from Julian's pitiful intelligence, or from that highly educated female lawyer sitting behind you who sneaks out in the dead of night and uses her own wedding anniversary as the password to steal from her spouse's safe?" With that stack of official certification documents bearing bright red seals slammed heavily onto the table, creating a dull thud, the entire previously noisy hall of the State Commercial Arbitration Tribunal fell into a nearly eerie, deathly silence. In an instant, the senior arbitrators on the panel hurriedly put on their glasses and huddled together to carefully examine the original credentials I had just submitted. In less than 2 minutes, the chief arbitrator's face turned completely dark. Immediately afterward, the public gallery and media area below erupted like a depth charge had been dropped, bursting into a deafening wave of intense discussion and mocking laughter. Julian's face, which had been smug and even wearing the smile of a victor, drained of all color in an instant, turning ashen pale. He stared fixedly at the fake patent numbers blown up on the large screen, his entire body trembling violently. He whipped his head around and glared viciously at Vivienne sitting behind him like a cornered beast. Julian screamed hysterically, "Vivienne, what the hell is going on here? Didn't you bitch, pat your chest and assure me that this was the absolute core confidential document worth 300 million that you personally stole from Damian's study safe? Why are all the patent numbers fake? Why?" At this moment, Vivienne had also completely panicked. The image of intellectual elegance and the grace of a branded female lawyer that she had maintained for years was torn to shreds in this instant. She looked at the evidence on the large screen, her face turning from white to green. Her high heels stumbled unsteadily, and she retreated several steps, crashing into the chair behind her. Vivienne shrieked, "This is impossible. This is absolutely impossible." I saw him lock the red craft paper envelope in there with my own eyes. The password was correct too. "Julian, don't look at me with those eyes. This document was submitted to the tribunal today under the name of Julian Enterprises. All the litigation documents were signed and stamped by you. What does this have to do with me? And stop trying to throw dirty water on me." I placed both hands on the desk with leisure and looked down from a height upon this pair of adulterers beginning to tear into each other madly in court. In my eyes held nothing but endless coldness and mockery. I said, trying to distance yourself now, "Vivienne, do you treat the law as a toy you can manipulate at will? As my wife of 3 years, and simultaneously the chief legal consultant of Damian Corporation drawing a high retainer fee, you used illegal means late at night to steal commercial secrets from your spouse and client and then provided them to a competitor. Now, Julian Enterprises has been implicated in serious commercial fraud and malicious litigation fraud because they cited the fake documents you supplied. And you, as the accomplice and supplier, do you think you can walk away from this unscathed today?" Upon hearing the terms commercial fraud and malicious litigation, Julian's scalp went completely numb. He knew full well in his heart that he had drained all the liquid capital from his listed companies for this project. Once he lost the case and the fraud was substantiated, he would not only face total bankruptcy and liquidation, but would likely go to prison. To save himself, with almost zero hesitation, he immediately turned his gun around in front of countless cameras, pointed at Vivienne, and began cursing her furiously. Julian yelled at the top of his lungs, "Your Honor, my fellow members of the media, I was deceived. I was completely played by this malicious woman, Vivienne. She was the one. She came to me on her own initiative, saying she had Damian's fatal weakness in her hands. She said that as long as I was willing to rekindle our old flame and give her 20% of Julian Enterprises' shares after the deed was done, she would be willing to steal Damian's things. I had absolutely no idea this document was fake. All the illegal acts of stealing commercial secrets and providing false evidence were done solely by Vivienne. I demand that the police be called immediately. I am the victim. I want to sue this woman for fraud." When Vivienne heard that, Julian, in order to exonerate himself, had shoved all the blame and charges entirely onto her head and even publicly exposed the scandal of their rekindled romance, she trembled with rage. She completely lost all reason and rushed forward like a shrew, pointing at Julian's nose as she shrieked her counterattack. Vivienne screamed, "Julian, you heartless, ungrateful bastard. You actually have the nerve to scapegoat me now. In the beginning, it was you who knelt in front of me like a mangy dog, crying that Julian Enterprises' capital chain was about to snap, begging me to think of a way to help you pull through. It was you who used every sweet word in bed, saying that as long as I helped you bring down Damian, you would marry me in grand style. Now that things have gone wrong, you want to just run away. I'm telling you, Don't even think about it. If it comes down to it, we all go down together. Nobody gets off easy. Watching these two once well-dressed individuals in the trial hall now biting each other like rabid dogs without any bottom line, I sat in the chair opposite them, not a single ripple in my heart, let alone what one would call pity. In my eyes, they were now nothing but two corpses accelerating their own decay. I unhurriedly took my personal phone from the inner pocket of my suit jacket. Under the watchful eyes of countless cameras and spotlights in the hall, I calmly dialed a string of numbers. I deliberately turned on the speakerphone and pointed the phone's microphone toward the forest of microphones in front of me. The call was connected very quickly. A serious and authoritative middle-aged man's voice came from the other end. I said, "Hello, is this Secretary Vance of the State Bar Association Disciplinary Committee? This is Damian, CEO of Damian Corporation. I'm currently in Trial Chamber 3 of the State Commercial Arbitration Tribunal. I wish to file a real-name report with your committee against Vivienne, a senior partner at Aegis Law Firm. She has used her position and status as a spouse to illegally steal core commercial secrets of my corporation, accepted promises of massive illicit benefits from a competitor, and colluded with others to use fabricated evidence in a commercial fraud case involving an amount reaching 300 million. Currently, the complete surveillance footage of her stealing from the safe late at night, her illegal transaction chat records with Julian spanning a full year, and the entire chain of evidence regarding all financial transactions have been sent by my special assistant to your committee's official reporting email and to the head of the disciplinary inspection team without missing a single word." As my words fell, Secretary Vance's tone on the other end of the phone instantly became extremely stern. The voice on the phone said, "Miss Damian, please rest assured. Our Bar Association will show absolutely no leniency towards such scum who seriously violate professional ethics and trample on the bottom line of the law. Due to the extremely vile nature of this case, our on-site law enforcement investigation team has actually already been dispatched and will arrive at the arbitration tribunal within 5 minutes." The moment the call disconnected, Vivienne, who had just been frantically trading insults with Julian, collapsed as if all the bones and strength had been drained from her body. Her face was deathly pale, utterly bloodless. Her legs suddenly went weak amid the chaotic clatter of high heels on the floor, and with a heavy thud, she collapsed unceremoniously onto the cold chair. Vivienne looked at me with a gaze of near despair and pleading. Tears finally began to fall, even streaking her meticulously applied eyeliner. Vivienne sobbed, Damian, I beg you, you cannot do this. Do you have any idea what price I paid to get to where I am today? I studied hard for 10 full years, endured countless sleepless nights before I finally managed to sit in the position of senior partner at a top law firm. I am a master of laws. I am an elite in this profession. This one phone call of yours to report me, my license to practice will be completely destroyed, and my entire life's work will be finished. I slowly stood up and walked step by step until I stood before her, looking down from a height at this woman who, even at a moment like this, was still lamenting her reputation and status. My eyes held no anger, only the revulsion one feels when looking at a disgusting insect. I said, "Vivienne, the moment you indulged your greed in that pitch-black deep night, when you used our wedding anniversary as the password to unlock my safe, your career was personally sent into the crematorium by your own hands. Intellectual green tea bitch, in-mouth full of noble morality and legal statutes, yet behind the scenes doing nothing but thievery and whoring. Scum like you is even fit to mention the word lawyer. You have utterly defiled this noble profession." The moment my words ended, the tightly closed doors of the trial hall were suddenly pushed open from outside. 4 law enforcement officers from the State Bar Association Disciplinary Committee, in crisp uniforms and with stern expressions, walked in with synchronized steps amid the frantic flashbulbs of the hall full of journalists. They did not even glance at Julian standing nearby. They directly presented their documents and stopped squarely in front of Vivienne. The disciplinary officer said coldly, "Lawyer Vivienne, given that the evidence chain provided by Miss Damian is completely intact and the case involves severe offenses and an extremely vile impact on society, The State Bar Association has officially decided to suspend all your practice rights effective immediately and to formally initiate the ultimate sanction procedure for revoking your lawyer's professional license. Please come with us immediately to undergo a comprehensive and in-depth investigation, witnessed by countless lenses throughout the hall and broadcast live in real time by financial journalists. Vivienne was hauled up from her seat by 2 law enforcement officers as if dragging a dead dog and pulled toward the exit. The social status and intellectual halo she had been so proud of turned into nothing more than bubbles in that instant. At exactly 3 o'clock in the afternoon, after the earth-shattering storm at the arbitration tribunal, I drove back alone to the luxury villa located in the prime downtown area. In the moment I pushed open the living room door, I saw Vivienne already sitting on the wooden floor, utterly distraught. Her suit was now somewhat disheveled, and her hair was a mess. Where was even a trace of that high-spirited, high-flying female elite demeanor she used to flaunt during TV interviews? The moment she saw me enter, Vivienne scrambled and crawled over as if grasping at the last straw of salvation, throwing herself at my feet, reaching out her hands to desperately cling to my thigh. Vivienne wailed, "Husband, husband, I truly know I was wrong. I was deceived by that animal, Julian. It was him who kept whispering poison in my ear, saying, 'You never really cared about me at all, that you only saw me as a decorative vase.' I was momentarily confused and did something so despicable and inhuman. Damian, we have been married for 3 full years. Even if I have no merit, I have worked hard. There are true feelings between us. You cannot be so heartless to me. Withdraw the report, please. Tell the Bar Association it was just a prank between husband and wife. Please, I beg you, save me." Without any hesitation, I coldly took a large step backward, making her lunge miss, causing her whole body to sprawl humiliatingly onto the icy marble floor. Pulled out a divorce agreement that had already been drafted by my other legal team and stamped with the official seal from my briefcase and ruthlessly flung it onto the coffee table in front of her. I said, "Stop disgusting me, Vivienne. Put away your cheap tears. Every extra sob makes me feel more nauseous. Sign it. You seriously violated your duty of marital fidelity during the marriage and used your position to maliciously steal core commercial secrets of Damian Corporation, causing damage to our corporate reputation and fluctuations in our stock price. In accordance with the prenuptial agreement we signed before our marriage and the current applicable laws and regulations, you must not only leave with nothing but must also legally compensate Damian Corporation for the direct reputational and economic losses caused by your acts of espionage totaling $5 million. Upon hearing the words "leave with nothing" and $5 million, Vivienne looked as if she had been struck by lightning. Her eyes widened hugely, looking at that string of cold numbers on the agreement in disbelief, and she began screaming hysterically. Vivienne screamed, "$5 million! Damian, have you gone mad? My professional license has been revoked. All my bank accounts have been temporarily frozen by the court because of suspected involvement in fraud. I have no income at all right now. Where do you expect me to find $5 million? You are pushing me to a dead end. You want me to die." I stood with both hands in my trouser pockets, looking down at her coldly from above, not a single trace of warmth in my eyes. I said, "Pushing you to a dead end. Vivienne, when you were sending our corporation's core business documents to Julian in the dead of every night, when you and Julian were plotting in your private club how to drain Damian Corporation's cash flow and make me, Damian, bankrupt and homeless on the street, why did you never think about whether you were pushing me to a dead end then? Let me tell you, you will sign this agreement today, whether you want to or not. If you obediently sign and get lost, for the sake of the past 3 years, I can give you 24 hours to move out. If you dare say a single no, there is a police car from the Economic Crimes Division parked right outside the front door. What you will face then is not just bankruptcy and debt, but a minimum of 10 years in prison. As such a clever big lawyer, you should know which is more comfortable, sewing in a prison cell or paying off debts outside. After hearing my words, Vivienne collapsed completely onto the floor. She knew I was not joking. She knew even better that with my methods and the ironclad evidence I held in my hands, sending her to prison would be even simpler than crushing an ant. With a trembling right hand, she shakily picked up the black pen from the coffee table. On the final page of the agreement, in utter humiliation and despair, she signed her name Vivienne. All the cleverness, schemes, and high IQ calculations she had once taken such pride in ultimately shattered before absolute power and unassailable ironclad evidence, not even the dregs of her person remaining. Inni put away the agreement and, looking down upon her, delivered my final words. Inni said, "The clock is ticking now. You have only 24 hours. Take your cheap clothes and get the hell out of my house for good." After cleanly dealing with the internal mole Vivienne, the only thing left was to handle Julian, who had been jumping up and down behind the scenes. Because at the commercial arbitration tribunal this morning, Julian had utterly exposed the super scandal of malicious litigation fraud in front of all the mainstream media and peers across the entire province, Julian Enterprises suffered a devastating sell-off in the capital markets within just 2 short hours. By 4 o'clock in the afternoon, the stock prices of the 3 listed companies under Julian Enterprises hit their limit down immediately after the market opened, evaporating a full 30% of their market value in just half a day. Various commercial banks that had originally provided them with loans caught wind of the situation one after another and began forcibly initiating pre-lawsuit preservation measures demanding early repayment of all massive loans. Julian's capital chain snapped into pieces of scrap metal in that instant. Just as I was sitting in my office drinking black coffee, the assistant hurriedly pushed the door open and walked in. The assistant said, "Mr. Damian, as expected, just as you predicted, that bastard Julian is planning to abscond and flee." According to the latest confirmed information we obtained from within the civil aviation system, half an hour ago, Julian used black market intermediaries to maliciously mortgage and siphon off several of his Rolls-Royce luxury cars and 2 villas in prime locations at extremely low prices. He has also used illegal channels to book a one-way international flight ticket to an unnamed small country in North America departing at exactly 9 o'clock tonight. He is now fully disguised and taking back roads toward the international terminal of our state international airport. I put down my coffee cup, stood up, and walked to the floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the gloomy sky outside. The corner of my mouth curled into a cruel arc. Inni said, "Let him run. No need to intercept him on the way. However, you will immediately take all the accusation materials we organized last night regarding Julian's suspected misappropriation of massive public funds from his listed companies, malicious transfer of illegal assets, and infringement of our corporation's trade secrets, and send them directly to the hands of the team leader at the Economic Crimes Division. Explicitly tell them that Julian is now attempting to abscond with illicit funds, and that the whereabouts of the involved criminal funds are in several of his hidden overseas trust accounts. If he is allowed to escape, it will be an enormous loss." The assistant immediately understood. Without daring to waste a single second, he turned and ran out to make arrangements. And at exactly 8:30 in the evening, the International Departures Hall of Terminal 2 at State International Airport was bustling with crowds. Julian had disguised himself tightly. He wore a black baseball cap pulled down very low, a large black surgical mask covering his face, an inconspicuous cheap jacket, and carried only a worn travel bag in his hand. He was looking around nervously in the queuing crowd, his eyes filled with extreme terror and agitation. Just as he barely made it to the very front of the line, and with trembling hands handed his passport and ticket through the security checkpoint window, 4 burly plainclothes officers, who had been pretending to read newspapers and drink coffee nearby, suddenly pounced like tigers descending a mountain, attacking from all 4 directions with lightning speed. Before Julian could react or let out a scream, his entire right arm was viciously pinned behind his back by a plainclothes officer using an arm-lock technique. The tremendous impact slammed his whole body hard against the cold, non-slip marble floor. The plainclothes officer pulled out gleaming handcuffs, and with a crisp, clean click locked them around his wrists. The plainclothes officer said sternly, "Julian, we are officers from the Economic Crimes Division of the State Police. You are now suspected of massive commercial fraud. fund misappropriation, and malicious transfer of illegal assets. We are placing you under formal criminal arrest. Come quietly and take a walk with us. At that very moment, I was standing behind the one-way floor-to-ceiling window of the VIP lounge on the second floor. I held a warm cup of black coffee in my hand, looking down from above, coldly observing Julian on the first floor, who was now sprawled on the ground, struggling frantically like a dead dog, his baseball cap fallen aside, revealing a face covered in sweat and utter despair. His dream of fleeing abroad with the last bit of ill-gotten gains to live a carefree life was, at that instant, crushed into dust by me, Damian. The business world is a battlefield. Those who betray me never come to a good end. After just 2 or 3 days, this shocking case of a highly educated female lawyer colluding with her tycoon lover to betray her husband, steal confidential information, but suffering a crushing counterattack completely erupted onto the front pages of every major financial media outlet, legal newspaper, and online social platform in the entire city. Almost every news app's push notification headline was written clearly and distinctly: biggest disgrace in the profession. Renowned commercial lawyer Vivienne steals ex-husband's multi-million-dollar secrets for lover, has license revoked on the spot, faces $5 million massive lawsuit. Lover involved in case formerly arrested by Economic Crimes Division. For a time, the name Vivienne completely became synonymous with a rat on the street that everyone shouted to beat, synonymous with utter ruin in our city and even the entire legal community. The prestigious law school she once graduated from issued an emergency official statement that very afternoon, announcing Vivienne's permanent removal from the list of distinguished alumni. Aegis Law Firm, the largest law firm in the entire city where she had once worked, issued a public statement signed jointly by several of its most senior partners, completely severing all ties with her and threatening to pursue the devastating damage she had caused to the firm's reputation. The elite intellectual social circle she once took such pride in, those with whom she had high tea and chatted about wine and golf, at this moment enforced a merciless and total blockade against her. No one dared to answer her calls at this time, and even less did anyone dare to extend a helping hand to her. A week later, on my way driving alone to a high-level meeting at the company, passing by a secluded street corner coffee shop in the city center, I inadvertently saw Vivienne at the roadside through the bulletproof glass window of my Maybach. At this moment, where was there any trace on Vivienne of that dazzling, meticulously polished image of a top female lawyer from before? She wore a cheap synthetic garment bought from a night market stall and a pair of old flat shoes covered in mud. Her originally well-maintained long hair fell messily over her shoulders. Her face was sallow, and her whole body was thin to the point of being just skin and bones. Right then, her body was tightly surrounded by several burly debt collectors from a private collection agency with fierce, fleshy faces. Those people pointed their coarse fingers, almost poking her nose, loudly pointing at her and hurling filthy insults. Because she not only carried the $5 million massive lawsuit for reputational damages that she owed me, but also various joint debts she had accumulated while previously assisting Julian. Now, in this city, no legal enterprise or institution, not even a small street restaurant, dared to hire a former female lawyer with such severe moral and legal stains. She could not even find an ordinary clerk's job, paying $1,000 a month, and could only barely scrape by doing odd jobs in some unseen places. Driven to desperation, Vivienne had even shamelessly sought out the entrance of the upscale villa community where Julian's parents lived the previous afternoon, crying all the way, holding on to her last sliver of hope. She thought that based on the true feelings she and Julian had shared in the past, Julian's family would at least give her some financial consolation and compensation. However, she never dreamed that less than 5 minutes after she stood at the villa community's main gate, Julian's shrewish old mother, accompanied by 2 family security guards, came out clutching a filthy broom, while, frantically spitting at her, she loudly chased her out the gate, beating her as she ran. Julian's mother cursed loudly on the street. "Vivienne, you shameless jinx, you stinking fox spirit. You are the cheap slut who ruined my son. If it weren't for you seducing my son with that damned fake document, how could Julian Enterprises possibly have gone bankrupt? How could my son now be arrested and thrown in jail? You actually have the nerve to come to our house asking for money. Get lost. If you don't get lost now, I will release the dogs and let them bite you to death, you shameless whore. I sat in the back seat of my slowly moving luxury car, coldly watching Vivienne at the roadside being shoved and jostled by creditors, only able to crouch on the ground, hugging her head and weeping in despair. Without any hesitation, I reached out and pressed the window control button indifferently. As the black bulletproof glass slowly rose, the sounds of crying and shouting outside were completely shut out into another world. All of this, every single bit of it, was the consequence of her own actions. She did not deserve a shred of sympathy. In a full half-month later, Julian Enterprises, which once dominated our city with assets reaching hundreds of millions, officially declared bankruptcy and liquidation under the auspices of the State Superior Court due to the complete severing of its capital chain and its CEO Julian being entangled in severe criminal lawsuits. At the closed-door bankruptcy asset auction jointly organized by the court and the asset evaluation company this morning, I, dressed in a sharply tailored and commanding pure black handmade suit, sat with a composed expression in the most central VIP seat in the first row, because the entire reputation of Julian Enterprises had become utterly foul in the market, and their core technology and business carried massive hidden risks of legal disputes. Apart from Damian Corporation, practically no other capable competitor in the entire auction venue dared to raise their paddle to bid at this time. I raised my paddle with complete leisure. Ultimately, amid the clear sound of the auctioneer's hammer falling 3 consecutive times, Damian Corporation acquired all the remaining quality core businesses, undamaged premium assets, and their originally heavily invested core high-tech team of Julian Enterprises at a rock-bottom price that was practically a steal in a completely natural and logical manner. Just as the auction ended, my special assistant, his face full of excitement and even breathing somewhat rapidly, came trotting over to me holding a thick stack of complete legal acquisition contracts, respectfully handing me my usual custom-made pen. The assistant said excitedly, "Miss Damian, fantastic! The acquisition process has been completely and legally finalized. The funds we utilized in this judicial auction market don't even amount to 1/10 of the peak market value that Julian Enterprises originally had. This great victory not only allows us to completely eliminate the biggest competitor and potential obstacle in our entire city market in an extremely short time, but because of the comprehensive absorption of their core business sectors, the market share and implicit value of Damian Corporation across the entire province has directly expanded to more than double within a single day." I calmly took the pen from his hand, not displaying any excessive ecstasy. Instead, with an extremely steady and seasoned posture, I signed my name, Damian, stroke by stroke on the final page of the contract, then closed the pen cap with a crisp click. I said, "For the grand blueprint of Damian Corporation's future, this is nothing but an insignificant, brilliant beginning. Notify the senior management. Everyone is working overtime tonight. I want the comprehensive restructuring and absorption of Julian's assets completed within 1 week." Half an hour later, I stood alone before the floor-to-ceiling window of the CEO's office on the 50th floor of the Damian Corporation headquarters tower. I held a cup of warm black coffee in my hand, gazing down from above through the massive, clear glass at the entire bustling modern supercity bathed in the glow of the setting sun below. Deep inside me, there were no ripples of emotion at this moment, not even a trace of the joy of victory. There was only absolute rationality and calm. That pair of clownish figures who had each harbored their own malicious schemes, attempting to use despicable cunning and betrayal to trample me, Damian, under their feet in order to fulfill their own greedy desires, had now finally met their respective endings, the most just and the most miserable. Julian was now in a detention center without sunlight, awaiting a court sentence of at least 10 years in prison, spending the rest of his life within cold walls, redeeming his sins by sewing. And Vivienne, that clever but unprincipled former wife, that intellectual green tea bitch, was now at the very bottom rung of society, living like a rat that everyone calls out to beat, homeless and hiding every day from the frantic pursuit and blockade of debt collection agencies, living in endless regret and despair. And I, Damian, had not only perfectly preserved the business empire I had painstakingly built during this elaborately laid counter-encirclement and hunt, but had also leveraged the divine assistance handed to me by these two fools to logically and smoothly complete the most massive and thorough round of capital expansion in the history of Damian Corporation. The business world is a battlefield, and so is life. In this jungle of steel and concrete filled with desire and betrayal, cheap sympathy is never needed. Only absolute rationality, flawless patience, and sufficiently ruthless methods are the sole principles of survival to keep oneself in an undefeatable position. Inai slowly turned around, not even sparing a glance at the divorce agreement on the desk behind me, and strode purposefully toward the brightly lit, high-level multifunction conference room. In there, an even broader and grander top-tier commercial territory awaited my step-by-step conquest.